All right, think about this for a second. We started out as, well, basically just another animal, kind of hiding from predators. And now we pretty much run the entire planet. So the huge question we're tackling today is, how in the world did a pretty insignificant primate become the ruler of Earth?
You know, for millions of years, our ancestors were nothing special. I mean, really. They weren't the strongest, definitely not the fastest, and certainly not the toughest creatures out there. They were just another player in the huge, complicated game of survival. So what changed? What was the secret ingredient that flipped the entire script?
I mean, just look at the difference. The gap between where we were and where we are now it's absolutely insane. We went from being someone's lunch to being a force that can literally change the planet's climate. From tiny, scattered groups to a global society of billions. Seriously, how did that even happen?
And let's be real here. If you put one of our ancestors in a fight with, say, a saber-toothed cat, yeah, they were toast. No question. We didn't have sharp claws, we didn't have thick fur, and we definitely didn't have super speed. Physically speaking, we were at a massive disadvantage.
So, what was our secret weapon? Well, it was this thing right here, the brain. But here's the catch. It's an absolute energy hog. Think about it. It's only about 2% of our body weight, but it devours a whopping 25% of our body's energy. That's even when you're just sitting there doing nothing.
Okay, so having this super powerful, energy-hungry brain came with some major downsides. To feed the brain, evolution had to take that energy from somewhere else, and it took it from our muscles. So we became physically weaker. On top of that, it made childbirth way more dangerous, and our babies were born totally helpless. This basically forced us into a corner. We had absolutely no choice but to rely on each other and work together to survive.
Okay, so we're weak, and we have to cooperate. How does that lead to taking over the world? Well, it all started with our very first and maybe most important superpower, something that no other animal on this planet could do.
So about 70,000 years ago, something incredible happened. It's like a switch just flipped inside the human mind. Historians call it the cognitive revolution. And this wasn't just about learning a few new words or something simple like that. No, this was like a massive software update for our brains. It fundamentally changed the way we saw the world. And this is the part that changed everything. We as humans suddenly gained the ability to create and, more importantly, believe in things that don't physically exist. We call them imagined realities. Think of them as invisible stories, shared rules that millions and millions of us just agree to live by.
Want a perfect example? Money. I mean, what is it really? It's just a piece of paper or maybe a number on a computer screen. It has zero real intrinsic value. You can't eat it, it won't keep you warm at night, but it works. Why? Because we all share the same story about it. We all agree to believe that it has value.
And it's not just money. It's the same thing for concepts like laws or corporations or even entire countries. You can't physically point to the law. You can't hold a nation in your hands. And yet, these incredibly powerful, shared stories are what allow millions, even billions, of complete strangers to cooperate with each other and build massive societies.
And really, that's how we were able to scale up. You know, chimpanzees are smart. They can cooperate in groups of maybe a few dozen. But because of these shared stories, these fictions, humans can cooperate in groups of millions. And that, right there, is the foundation of every single city, every company, every civilization we've ever built.
All right, so let's move on. We've got this new power of cooperation. How did we use it? Well, it led us to our next big leap, a decision that, honestly, was one of the biggest and riskiest gambles in the history of life.
This brings us to the agricultural revolution. So after hundreds of thousands of years of roaming around, hunting and gathering, we decided to do something completely different, settle down in one place and grow our own food. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a fantastic idea, right? A total upgrade. Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
And here's the crazy part, the big paradox. For the average person, life actually got worse. Yeah, you heard that right. Hunter-gatherers, they had a really diverse diet and way more free time. But the first farmers, they worked longer, much harder hours. Their diet was super limited, mostly to 1 or 2 crops, and they got sick way more often from living in crowded settlements.
So that brings up a pretty big question, doesn't it? If life got harder and less healthy and probably way more boring for the individual person, then why in the world did we do it? Why did farming take over the entire planet?
The answer has nothing to do with making life better for the individual. It was all about the numbers.
See, farming, with all its problems, could produce way more food per acre of land. It couldn't support better lives, but it could support more lives. And that's what happened. Our population absolutely exploded, and these new farming societies just crowded out all the hunter-gatherers that were left.
Okay, so we used stories to work together, and we used farming to multiply. We went from a few thousand people to billions. So let's hit the fast forward button and see where this wild ride has brought us to today.
Just look at this timeline. It really shows how incredibly fast things have started to change. For hundreds of thousands of years, things were pretty slow. Then, all of a sudden, in just a tiny, tiny sliver of our species' existence, everything went into overdrive. And the big one, the scientific revolution, which happened only about 500 years ago, that kicked everything into hyperdrive.
You know, the truly revolutionary idea behind the scientific revolution was actually pretty simple. It was the discovery of ignorance, admitting we don't know. Instead of just relying on old stories and ancient texts, we started observing, experimenting, and questioning everything. And that one simple shift in thinking unlocked more power than anyone could have ever dreamed of.
And the power we have today, it's almost unbelievable. We can literally edit the code of life itself with genetic engineering. We're in the process of creating entirely new kinds of intelligence with AI. We've become so powerful that we are now, even if unintentionally, changing the climate of our entire planet.
And that brings us to the biggest question of all. We've gained all this incredible power. We have more wealth and knowledge than ever before. For many of us, we've conquered hunger and diseases that plagued our ancestors for millennia. But are we any happier?
Well, the surprising answer seems to be maybe not. The evidence is really murky. It seems like our happiness isn't really tied to our objective conditions, like how much money we have. Instead, it seems to depend on the gap between our expectations and reality. And the problem is, the more we achieve, the higher our expectations get. It's like we're constantly chasing a moving goalpost.
So, we've kind of solved the puzzle of how a weak, insignificant animal ended up conquering the planet. But in gaining these godlike powers, we've stumbled into a whole new challenge. The big question for us now isn't what can we do, because we can do almost anything. The real question is, what do we want? And that's something for all of us to think about.